Hello, everybody, and welcome to this short teach-in video, which is part of a series of teach-in videos that we are putting together with bite-sized pieces of information covering a host of issues impacting farm tenancies. Now, this is being recorded in August 2022, so the information that we are providing you with relates to what was known at that time. And in this teach-in video, we will be looking at the forthcoming changes that we are expecting to take place in the statutory rules for tenancy succession under the Agricultural Holdings Act 1986. Now, before I start today's session, I should say that it forms part of a wider video library that's available from the Tenant Farmers Association. And you can get all of that on our YouTube channel. So if you've stumbled across this because you've Googled this information, go to our YouTube channel. You can get a host of information there, and you can also subscribe and you'll be notified when new material is posted. We're also extremely grateful to Barclays Agriculture, who have been sponsoring our webinar series and our video content for a little while now, so it's good to have them on board with us too. So today, as I say, we're looking at the changes to statutory succession under the Agricultural Holdings Act 1986, what we're expecting to come up. And I'm delighted to say that we've got one of our advisors with us to talk about that. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Sara Sumner. Good morning, Sara, and over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, George. Thank you. Yes, so I'm here today just to speak a little bit about the forthcoming changes under the eligibility tests for succession. There's been quite a lot of debate and discussion around the changes under the succession rules, which has come about under the Agriculture Act 2020. So we're in a slightly different position in England and Wales at the moment. So just to recap where we are under both, in England, there is a regulation now in place, which is the Agricultural Holdings Request for Landlord's Consent or Variation of Terms and Suitability Test, England, Regulations 2021, very catchy title, which is now in place, but it's bringing most of the changes, two in particular, changes, one to the suitability test and one to the commercial unit test, on the 1st of September 2024. So the changes aren't quite happening yet, but they will be upon us before we know it, especially in planning for succession terms. Those changes will also, they'll affect applications on when the retirement notice is served or on the date of death. So if either of those 2 dates are after or on or after the 1st of September 2024, these new rules will apply. Now, in Wales, we're slightly behind the curve. The changes are broadly the same, but the regulation hasn't been put in place yet. So there's no guarantee that that same date will apply. We're pushing for that to be in continuity with England, because it's easier for everyone to plan on that basis. But at this stage, there's no guarantee. So that's a bit of a watch this space if you are sat in Wales at the moment. Can I have a next slide, please? Okay, so what does this mean in practice? So the first major change is to the commercial unit test, which is sometimes known as the occupancy test. At present, applicants must not be in a separate unit of accommodation, which basically means if it's farmed separately, if it would produce sufficient income for 2 full-time male workers, then it would constitute a separate unit. There are a few exclusions for this, but that's the basic test. So that one is being removed in its entirety. The next test will be a strengthened suitability test. So one of the 3 remaining tests is the suitability test. And again, this changes from the 1st of September 2024. At the moment, it's quite basic. It's just looking at general state of health and training and experience. It's going to be replaced with something far more robust, And it's basically there to give the landlord and the tribunal, down the tribunal route, confidence that the potential successor is going to be capable of taking on the tenancy in the business. The biggest change, I suppose, in this one is how you're looking at the suitability, and the tribunal can look at it as if to see whether the potential successor, if they were applying for a new tenancy, they would be in the top shortlisted candidates. It doesn't necessarily mean you'd have to be the best candidate, but you need to be in the top candidates. So it's quite a change on how you're looking at this test. It's a lot more stringent, but not necessarily a bad thing, as you have to prove that you can run the business, basically. So that's the second major change, both happening, commercial unit test abolishing, suitability test being strengthened from the 1st of September 2024 in England, hopefully the same in Wales, but we're awaiting that date. The final amendment that really is effective for succession is actually already in place, and that's the removal of the age and incapacitation requirements for retiring tenants. So basically a retirement notice can be served at any time now, rather than when a tenant hits a certain age. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so that was a very, very quick whistle-stop tour of the changes. There is a little bit more to it, but if succession, as you probably know, is incredibly complex, or can be incredibly complex, so, and full of pitfalls. So it's far better to plan if you have that ability to be able to plan it. And you can talk to one of the advisors at head office at any point in time. That's for members. If you're listening to it and you're not a member yet, please feel free to ring and talk about becoming a member. We are here to listen and to give some bespoke advice. So that's my whistle-stop tour, George. I'm sure you've probably got some questions for me on that.
Sarah, thank you. That was very succinct in terms of the issues that we are having to think about. So if I'm clear here, these changes aren't going to be taking place for a number of years yet, at least in England, until September 2024. And obviously in Wales, we don't yet know yet. So can you just say, for people who are looking ahead and planning for the future, what do you think they should be thinking about to ensure that their potential successors are ready for the new suitability test, which obviously is the biggest change that we can see forthcoming in 2024?
Okay, so I think certainly what I've been advising people at the moment, I think the best thing you can be doing is to be looking at how you would get yourself into a position where if you were applying for a brand new tenancy, you would be a strong candidate. And to do that is knowing the farm and the farming business inside out and back to front. Get some understanding of the financial tools, so understand your budgets, cash flows, get involved with the farm planning. So it's quite easy day to day when running a farm to forget that you've got junior members coming into the farming business. They don't have to be partners, but get them involved in any rent reviews that are happening, any meetings with the landlord. Big opportunity as with change to farming support. Make sure those candidates know exactly what those farming supports, what the farming support's available with farm, and get them to help with the planning on how that fits with the farm. When that candidate is applying for succession, especially if it happens upon death, so obviously there won't be anyone there to hold their hand going forward, but they will have that confidence to show that they know the farm, they know the farming business, they understand the administration side as well as the practical side. It can be quite easy to forget that it's that big important bit behind the scenes. So as much involvement and understanding, get them to go to the meetings, etc. Apart from that, they need to absolutely be able to demonstrate their farming credentials. So practical and academic experience on the farm, that will shine through on any tribunal application, or indeed any discussions you're having with the landlord. I think we talk about tribunal a lot because that is the formal route and the backstop, but a lot of successions happen on negotiation, and I think with the new changes, the landlord's going to be looking for exactly the same. It's that opportunity to put them together. And the other, I suppose, is to be in good health, which is still the same as what it is now in terms of suitability. But obviously we can't always plan for that. But as best you can, keep yourself in good health.
Thanks, Sarah. That's very clear. And just to be clear, what you said earlier, they don't have to be the best candidate necessarily for the succession. They just have to be amongst those who would have been considered as potential shortlist candidates for that holding. So that's something I think to bear in mind. Now, those things that you've talked about seem to me to be fairly sensible things to prepare anybody to take on a holding, even if they're doing so before these changes take place. So I think they would stand people in good stead, whatever. Now, you said the commercial unit test is going to be hanging around for a couple of years. Can you just remind us again what the main provisions of that are, so people are aware before they see that go completely?
Yeah, so yes, you're right. We do still have the commercial unit test. So anyone applying between now and the 1st of September 2024 is going to have to meet the conditions of this test. So basically, it's where an applicant cannot occupy another unit that meets the definition as in the test. And I'm going to read this to you because it's quite a long definition, but it's basically where a unit of agricultural land which is capable, when farmed under competent management, of producing a net annual income to amount of not less than the aggregate of the average annual earnings of 2 full-time male agricultural workers. So in other words, it's the applicant will not be eligible if they're in occupation of an additional holding or unit of land that, when it's farmed, if it was being farmed on its own, it would be capable of those wages. I briefly said earlier, I think that there are some exceptions, and the exceptions really is where land's rented on a farm business tenancy for less than 5 years. So if you've only got a 2 or 3 year FBT, that won't count, or other forms of occupation such as a grazing license, that won't count either. So it's quite it's a test that can be planned carefully around, but you do have to continuously satisfy those provisions right throughout the whole process of succession. So things can change unexpectedly. Maybe inherit some land, or whatever it may be. You can't always plan out of it. So I think we're quite pleased to see that one going in its entirety. It takes out that element of doubt, I suppose.
Excellent, thank you. And finally, Sarah, we've got another teach-in on succession in this series, but it would be remiss if we just didn't say what are the other tests that people have to pass. Briefly, what are they, and how do they complete the picture? Okay,
so there are 2 remaining tests which are staying, and they are staying as far as we know at this stage. There's no expected amendments now to these, but we have the livelihood test and the close relative test. Now, the close relative test is actually one we've probably had the most discussion and debate about, and quite possibly the most questions about and misunderstanding in our office of late, because there was quite a lot of talk about whether the close relative test would change to broaden who is eligible. So nothing has changed. So it remains as set in legislation, which basically defines that it must be either a spouse, a civil partner, sibling, so brothers or sisters, children, or children that are treated as children in the context of a marriage or a civil partnership. So it's very close, it's very tight in terms of the test. There was a lot of, we were asking for grandchildren, nieces, nephews, slightly wider in those terms. That has not happened. So unfortunately, we are still in the position where it is those close relatives. The other test is the livelihood test, which causes us the biggest headaches in terms of planning. It's basically where the applicant has to have, in 7 of the previous years, they have to have 5 years upon the date of death or retirement, where they have derived their work from their income, their living cost from agricultural work on the holding, or part of a greater unit on the holding. I think we'll touch on that in another webinar a bit more, but that's it's stayed the same. It's what we're dealing with. Again, we can advise on bespoke things. We've got quite a bit of guidance. We've got guidance notes on livelihood test, but it's something we can advise on individual situations. There's more complexities in terms of diversification income. So that's something I think we'll talk about another time. But
okay, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, as you say, lots of detail in that test that we'll have to think about on another occasion. So we'll have to leave it there for now, I think. So everybody, hope you enjoyed tuning into this little teach-in, and don't forget to look out for all of the video material that you'll find on the Tenant Farmers Association YouTube channel. Now, if you're watching this in advance of our autumn and winter 2022 program, look out for some really interesting forthcoming sessions. We've got the report of the Tennessee Working Group due out in September, and we've got Baroness Rock coming to talk to us about that at the beginning of October. We've had a previous session on carbon and biodiversity net gain, and we're asking Charles Coward from Harper and Philip Mead from Davis Mead to come back and do a bit of a deeper dive into that subject. And before the end of the year, we hope to have the DEFRA team back to tell us about where things are going on policy terms. So watch out for all that stuff. And as Sarah said, if you're not a member of the TFA, you can get advice and information and support on a one-to-one basis from Sarah and some of our other advisors within the TFA. The annual subscription is only £220 per year, and you can join by going to the TFA website, which is www.tfa.org.uk, and click the Join Here button and follow the rest of the instructions. So thanks again to Barclays Agriculture for its kind sponsorship. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.